Hey Will, I've got music on my headphones and I'm gonna try to duplicate this effect here. Let me try some stuff. These are just stock photos I found. I don't know. This is from like a book. Yeah, it helps because it already has halftones in it. So here's what I'm gonna try to do. I'm gonna start with this one, duplicate that. I'm going to make it. Well, I'm gonna amp up the contrast. I'm using levels here. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna group that, duplicate it. Alright, I've got that one. I'm going to take the saturation on that down, so Control U. Right? See what happens. So now here's where I'm gonna duplicate that. On this one, I'm going to, I don't need that. Get that text out of here. Here. I don't need that either. Okay. This one, I'm gonna blur it. Hold on. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Yeah, let's try that. You can also play with your levels to darken that. Yeah, I'm just curious. So watch what happens when you take this and you put the opacity down on that one. Okay. So we're gonna go like that, but then we're gonna try something. I'm gonna duplicate that. I'm just duplicating these so that we have like all our options. Like this is the clean desaturated one, this is the blurred, and then this one I'm gonna do this like dissolve effect. Okay, so so there's I don't know. What happens if we take this? I want to desaturate this a little bit, so I'm going to do an adjustment layer with the hue saturation, and then here will be desaturated. You can change the color. So if you push one way or the other, you kind of give it that, like, I don't know, it's almost like it's faded from sunlight, like UV rays, like that. Make it more bluish. So I'm gonna duplicate that. Now what happens if I duplicate this one, I blur it, so filter, Gaussian blur. Okay. We could set this to dissolve. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Maybe. There's also I'm gonna duplicate these two and merge them. So this one is with the dissolve effect is on its own. Just one layer. So right now we're looking at this clean one. This one is, what happens if I do dissolve and then turn the opacity down? I just inverted it. Could also use some texture in there. I'm actually gonna see what happens if I dissolve this. Yeah, see, we're starting to get that effect. But I don't know if it's not right just yet. We could create a saturation adjustment level above everything, desaturate the whole thing. Let me just see what happens. Could use some more textures in there. paper textures. Lots of options here. Tortured paper, this is a good one. So these are textures that I bought from Studio 2AM. I think they had a sale. I got like this whole pack for maybe $10. Set that to, see, using screen on that gives it that kind of worn out look. So that's where you're getting that kind of like lightning texture in the dark areas, is from some kind of gritty texture that looks something like this, has like a lot of dark in it with some lighter areas in the texture, and you set that on screen blend mode, and that will lighten up and make it look like the paper's kind of you know, worn from the weather or scratched or scuffed. That's what gives you that effect. I'll do another sample like that with a different texture. Let me try to find, let's see. There's a ton in here. Light grunge textures. These I got from Spooner, or I think it's Spoon Graphics. Let's try something like this. Open that up in the old Photoshops. And put this on screen, but I'm going to turn that one off. Bring this one in. Make it big. Now invert it so that gives you that dark, and set that to screen. See, so this has a bluish tint because we inverted it. You know, those warm colors turn cool, and when you set it to screen, it gives it nice blue hue to everything. And with levels adjustments, Control L, you can crank up those highlights, right? Force the darks a little darker, so you get something like, it feels very much like it was a photo printed on paper and then left out, you know, on the street, and it got rained on and all that stuff. So I think we can, like, I feel like I can still emphasize a lot of the, because there's like this bleeding edge thing that you had. I want to try something where I get more of a blur. Okay, let me try this blur thing. Gaussian blur. Something like that, maybe. See, drop that below the screen. There we go. Now we're getting there. So I just took this super blurred one, dropped it below that screen. Let's turn this screen one on too. So we've got, remember this one? We want that on screen. Okay. Something like that. That's like 50% opacity. This is 100%. Now this thing, super blurred. We're gonna leave that under there here, but now we want to lower that opacity. So see what we got going on. We're getting that cool fuzzy effect, but we can also play with different blend modes. Darken, multiply. Let's try, what's overlay look like? No. Maybe something like linear burn. At this point, it's just like you figure out what feels good. I might do darken actually. Ooh. Yo. That's darken. So what happens if I take the levels on that and I lighten up? So there's parts of this that I don't like. I don't like how it's darkening up the edges here on the corners. So I'm going to create a mask, and then I'm going to paint out with like a soft brush like this. Turn the opacity down on the brush. So I'm going to paint this out in the mask. See how I'm darkening it and getting rid of that? Something like that. So this lets you kind of adjust things to taste a little bit more. See that? So you can go in the face, and you because this layer is so dark, you can go in there. You can also create an adjustment layer and go with the clipping mask here, and maybe set this to overlay, and set this to paint with like white on this overlay layer, and it's gonna brighten up. So I'm just kind of going in there by hand painting. And I'm lightening up the light areas of the face. There's the ear. You can see. So I hope that gives you some ideas. Again, you can see, here's this version, here's with the blur overlay on this layer. You gotta paint with black to actually, no, sorry, you gotta paint with white on that overlay layer to lighten it. Maybe it's really not doing anything. Oh, because this is so dark. Yeah, if I turn off that clipping mask, it's going over everything. So, we got a little halo effect. But then we turn this back on. Yeah. So, I'm trying to just go through these layers here. This is on darken, overlay with the white paint, screen texture. So it's not as harsh as it could be, so what you could do is take all this stuff, duplicate it, merge it, and then crank the levels on so right now we're just looking at, I'm inverting, we're just looking at this layer, okay? It's all flattened. I can go Control L and then mess up the, let's see what happens here. This is more the effect, I think. It had that bright white paper. See that? You crank up the highlights and you get more of that white of the space back in there. So what happens if we crank this up like this? Let's try that, but then this is getting really saturated, and I don't know if that's something you like. So you could go hue saturation in here, and then take that down. Right, you could crank it up, make it even more intense. You could change the hue. Okay, so it's not perfect, but I think that's a start. Hope that helps. I could spend more time figuring out exactly how to do it, but then, yeah, we could maybe do that in class a little bit. So.